Hi, merhaba. I'm Pelin, and I'm a product designer. I'm also one of the co-founders and the CEO of Zeppelin. Here I am at our San Francisco office, and today you can't imagine how excited I am, because this is our first ever user summit, Harmony. And for a first user summit, we have a wonderful schedule ahead of us. So let me start with the name, Harmony, how and why we picked it. I have to admit, we spent a lot of time thinking about it. We initially thought names like Zeppelin Build, Zeppelin Ship, Zeppelin Deliver, lots of others. And then we went with a not so obvious choice, Harmony. You might ask, why did we choose such a non-conference name? Well, on our first ever landing page, the tagline was, build pixel-perfect products in peace. The in peace part was, and still is, something we care a lot about at Zeppelin. Because at its core, Zeppelin is all about bringing people together to deliver on the promise of design. As a designer, I know how challenging it is to get aligned with many different disciplines that need to come together during the design and delivery of digital products. You have developers that need to understand exactly what to build, including things like how everything should connect, how the app should behave. And then you have designers. They need the freedom to iterate on designs without having to constantly explain things. Then you have your PMs. They want to make sure that everything moves according to the plan. Not to mention QA folks, marketers, copywriters, and more. During my journey as a designer, I've been amazed at what can be accomplished when this multidisciplinary team is in harmony. I've also seen the opposite, by the way, unfortunately, where the team is confused about what to build, unclear about how the app should behave, needs tons of design reviews, Slack messages, more meetings to get aligned. Instead of spending this time trying to understand each other, we should use that to design and develop beautiful experiences for our users. So you see, Harmony is an obvious choice. It represents what we all want as designers, as developers. When we understand each other, there is no limit to the value that we can create for our users. With this in mind, we've been working very hard on Zeppelin over the past 6 years. We now have more than 4.5 million users, including you. So, what are we going to share with you today at Harmony? Well, we are fortunate to have some amazing teams to share their experiences, learnings, and best practices. Like Diana from PepsiCo, whose team doubled in size last year. She will share how she managed through the growing pains and achieved harmony across designers, engineers, and PMs. And we also have Davey from Disney Streaming. He will share how his team launched a widely successful streaming app, specifically for Latin America. And we have Adam from VML YNR, an awesome digital agency, and John from Atlassian. They will share the best practices the design and development teams can implement to achieve harmony. And, of course, since we have all these amazing speakers, as the Zeppelin crew, we thought it might be a good idea to announce a great feature that we've been working on for a while. This feature was one of the top requested features that we've been getting. I don't want to give any more away, but let's just say the team will be in flow when we announce these features. Thanks for joining. It means a lot to us as the Zeppelin crew. So now, grab a tea, coffee, beer, whatever you need, and settle in. I think we will all enjoy harmony. Now, let me turn it over to my co-founder, Berk. He is leading the product at Zeppelin. And Mike, our design advocate. Mike, Berk, I heard you have something really exciting to share with us today. Let's see what you've been cooking.
All right, thanks, Pelin. I'm Berk, I'm one of the co-founders.
And I'm Mike, I'm an advocate at Zeppelin.
It's great to have you all here today. We're actually going to tell you about 2 new features we're releasing today, but before we get to that, I'm going to actually give you a little bit of a story on how we sort of came up with the idea of these features. So basically, this is like since the beginning of Zeppelin, one of the top sort of support cases we were getting. is about some of the screens that people had in their projects where Zeppelin was performing really slowly.
Yeah, we got tons of them.
Yeah, so we were kind of looking into like why this might have happened. And we actually realized these things were massive. So they were basically these huge artboards where you have all your artboards in this one giant artboard, and then they were connected with arrows, documented with text layers. The goal of the designer is to really sort of show how everything connects, and this resonated really well with us. But we were still kind of thinking, is the design tool the right place to do this?
It's like this huge storyboard, right? Like,
right, exactly.
Massive.
So we then sort of went and talked to a lot of users, and basically we were trying to understand how they build flows. We had two buckets of users. First one is they were trying to do this in the design tool. In a way, this is really manual, like I mentioned, so you have to like draw these arrows yourself. Some people use plugins and components to simplify this process. But at the end of the day, the tool is not really built to do this stuff, so you're kind of struggling a lot. And one thing that we heard a lot is the fact that when your designs change and you update your flows, you kind of have to redo your flows from scratch and all the arrows and everything from scratch.
Yeah, if you want to like move a screen, right, the arrows will break, or like the text layers aren't right.
So that was like one of the key sort of pain points we heard from users. The second bucket of users is folks who use a separate tool to build their flows in. And these tools could be like a whiteboarding tool, a wireframing tool. And the problem here is that your flows are now in this separate place from your designs. So imagine a developer working on your designs. The main sort of source of truth for them would be the finalized designs along with the specs. Now you have your flows living somewhere else. So flows would kind of often get overlooked in this case. So that was like one of the main pain points.
Yeah.
Today, we're actually introducing two new features, flows and annotations, that will hopefully solve these problems in Zeppelin. So with flows, you can easily create user journeys in Zeppelin, and then with annotations, you can bring in documentation right next to your designs. So hopefully, the team has everything they need to sort of bring designs to life. So, you know, why don't we just actually go into the product and show people how these features work?
Enough talk. Right? Enough talk.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to action. We love action. Okay, so here I am in a Zeppelin project. And you can see I have some screens here. But you might notice there's a new tab. That's the Flows tab.
Right.
If I hop into here, this is where you're going to see and document your user journeys. But we're missing something. We're missing some screens. So let's go back to the dashboard. If we want to, we can click this icon here, and this will add all the screens in your section to your flow. Or I can right-click a screen and add it to a flow. We're going to go ahead and add all the screens in this section. All right, and there we go. Now, the cool thing here is that this orientation that the screens come in to flows is the same orientation that they were laid out in your design tool.
Right, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to just get started.
Yeah, so the information is saved and then inputted in the flows in Zeppelin. I'm just going to add some spaces here in between them, and you can see our grid system at work. So these screens are snapping to different positions, and boom, there you go. We didn't want to make it too difficult to move screens around and align them all and everything like that.
When you're building a flow, it's not really, you're not really worried about the pixel. It's more like you want everything to be aligned.
Yeah, the orientation and where the screens actually are is more important than them being like, you know, 1 micropixel right there and lined up. Okay, great. So you might have noticed that when I hovered over a screen, these blue points popped up on the side of the screen. I can drag those to create a connector, or I can go to any point on the side of the screen to create one. So boom, there we go. And it's snapped automatically to the side of the screen. I think for flows in Zeppelin, what is cool is that usually you have to be a designer in a design tool to create flows. But in Zeppelin, these screens are accessible to everyone. So you could be a marketer, you could be PM, you could be anybody else, and you can come in Zeppelin and create a flow. So we showed you how to create connectors from the side of a screen, but what about individual layers? Can you do that?
Of course.
That's right, of course. So Berk and I, we love baklava. Like if there was a layer in the screen, if this was an actual application and we saw baklava in here, we would click it immediately and we would go to the other screen. So there you go. That's how you connect a connector from an individual layer in a screen to our delicious baklava.
What's really nice about this part is that when you actually update your designs in your design file and publish new versions to Zeppelin, your flows will automatically get updated. And say if you move this baklava layer somewhere else, the connector will actually follow it automatically.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you move that baklava layer, we're gonna find it and we're gonna click it. Okay, so we showed you how you can create a happy path. Obviously it's a happy path because it leads to the baklava. But what if you wanted to create a connector that showed maybe an empty state or an error state? Well, you can do that too. Let's see how. So I connect a connector there. I can actually change the color of this connector. So I can change it to yellow for an empty state, or maybe a red for an error state. And I can also dash it to tell my team that there's some special interaction going on here.
Right.
Not only that, but I can create a label. So maybe this is no results. I can just drag it up there. Also, I can create floating labels. So if there's some maybe Easter egg on this screen and this hand waves when we click it, then we can notify our team of that too. Finally, when you select these screens, and this is what we talked about earlier, and you drag them around, the connectors don't break. And the labels stay on those connectors too.
Yeah, that was actually like one of the things that we kept hearing from users during the beta. Not only they save time while building the flow, but it's very common for you to add new screens to your flow, change your design. So it's really important that these connectors and these labels stay in place as you're moving things. So that's where a lot of people save time too with this feature.
Yeah.
And also one nice thing is that you kind of have a common language on how you build flows. So everybody in the team, developers, designers, PMs, they're all on the same page and around like how all these designs should connect.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you need like the Rosetta Stone to translate the hieroglyphics into Greek or something, right, to actually understand these. But no more, right? This is easily understandable. Okay, so we built a nice little simple flow here. But what does a more complicated flow look like? Well, let's check it out. If I go back to the dashboard and then back to a project, and I hop in a new one that Berk very kindly prepared for me, you can see that this one has tons more screens. So I keep scrolling, it's like, whoa, it's like an avalanche of screens. And if we check out the flow, you can see when I zoom out that this flow is quite a bit more complicated.
Right.
There's a lot more screens here. So it becomes difficult for me to understand the different pieces of this flow, the different subflows. So how do we communicate that? Well, you can do it by dragging, selecting, and adding a group. So maybe this is my sign up flow, not sign up flow. This is my onboarding flow. And then finally, this is my market subflow or group. So this gives you a way to visually organize all of your screens into groups.
Right.
Yeah, and then you can actually drag these screens around and it'll resize the group, or you can drag the group around itself to easily organize it. Another thing I want to show is how to navigate to groups. So you can click on the name and it sends you directly to that group, like that onboarding one we just created, or the market group. Yeah. You can also copy a link, and this will send you directly when you copy this link and you navigate to it, you who receives the link is going to navigate directly to this group.
Right. It's almost like you have a table of contents, and then you can direct people to one specific area of your flow.
It's like having a microscope. You know when you're like focusing a microscope? This focuses it for you automatically on the spot, which is awesome. Okay, cool. So we organized our flows into subflows and into groups. Great. But we know that, even this is like a pretty simple flow, right?
Flows are going to get way bigger than this.
Flows are going to get huge. They get like massive. They get planet size. I mean, these things are enormous. So how do we continue to organize flows as they get bigger? So that's what boards is for. You can add another layer of organization to your flows beyond groups.
Right. That's I think organization was one of the key themes to us as we were thinking about this feature. We know that flows get really complex really quick. So we now have groups where you can visually lay out things, and then you have boards. Groups are available to everybody, and then the boards feature is specific to our enterprise plan, where we know that these flows get really, really complex.
Yeah, they get huge, like we said before. Okay, so understanding these flows and seeing them is great, but what if I'm in an individual screen? How do I get the context of these flows?
Yeah, because it's pretty common for a developer to be focused in on one screen. You still want to get that information about the flow.
Yeah, a dev is usually looking at and just building a single screen, right? But you still need this context of the flow behind that when you're creating it. So we have some information for you here. On the left-hand side, you can see that this market home is coming into our market search. And then we leave to that results page we saw earlier and the no results page. But not only that, Zeppelin retains the fact that this was a yellow and dashed line, so you're notified of that interaction. And the label that we had put on the connector is still there.
Yeah, you can easily identify what that preview is going to take you.
Yeah, it's great. You can also navigate to the different screens by clicking the connectors. Groups and boards are a great way to organize your flows into subflows and communicate with the entire team. But what if I'm developing on an individual screen?
Right, that's actually like one of the key things about this feature. As a dev, you're pretty much always focused on this one screen building the UI. You still want to get that flow data, like that behind it, like what is this screen connected to?
Yeah, so as a dev, you're building that one screen, and you just want to be focused on that single screen, but you still want the context of those flows when you're looking in that view. And we give that to you. So on the left-hand side, you can see here that we have our market home screen, which is coming into our market search. We also have this search leaving to our result that we saw earlier, and the no result. Not only that, but the no result has retained the fact that this was a special yellow connector with that dashed line, and the label that we put on it of no results pops up.
Right, we want to make those different use cases as identifiable as possible.
Yeah, that's right. So you have all the information you need when you're building this screen. You can click these connectors and navigate to different screens, or you can go straight back. But did you notice anything different? That's right. There's annotations on this screen. Annotations are permanent notes that stay on the screen, and you can see them here, and you can see them on the right-hand side too.
Right, a little bit of a history about annotations. In fact, we've been talking to a lot of our users about how they use notes, the notes feature. And we kind of realized they actually use it for two different purposes. One is more sort of temporary notes where I come in and maybe sort of like Mike comes in and says, hey, could we change this copy to like something else?
I do that a lot. Yeah.
And the designer's sort of like updating the design, they resolve the note goes away. It's kind of a very temporary thing. And then there are more permanent notes where say an example is maybe a designer comes in and they document how a specific element in a design should behave, or a backend developer comes in, they share which API endpoint to use. These types of things as a developer you kind of need as you're looking at the design. Those are sort of like the most important things. So with what we basically did is we split the notes feature into two. What you know as notes is now called comments, and now we have annotations on top of that, where these annotations, they have specific types, they're always visible, they're much more prominent on the screen, and they're also always visible on the right panel.
Yeah, so let's see what it looks like when I actually add one. I can command click, and I select annotation here, and then I can also select the type of annotation. So we have a behavior, maybe it's a requirement that Berk was talking about, maybe it's an animation on the screen, an endpoint, or some kind of tracking. We're going to go with behavior and say, focus this search when we navigate here. Fantastic. So now I've added my annotation, and I can see it on the right-hand side too. And I can filter based on my annotations as well. So here are all my behaviors, my requirements, and my endpoints.
Right. I think one of the key things for developers here is they are able to focus on one type of annotation. So let's say as a developer, I'm like coming in and I'm going to work on the API endpoints today, so I can just filter to that, go through all my screens, and get the information I need. So we wanted to make that filtering as easy as possible so that you only are looking at the stuff you need at this very moment.
Yeah, you can work on APIs if you're feeling a little crazy. Maybe you work on requirements that day, or if you're feeling real crazy, then you work on behaviors. No,
Right.
but the point remains that it's important to filter these and see that list of things that you need to work on this screen, right?
Yeah. So basically with annotations, you can document how design should behave. You can document your animations, add GIFs and videos in there to give hints to developers on how that should look like. You can share product requirement links. You can share links to your API docs. So it is pretty customizable to whatever you sort of need to document. So with all this information that lives right next to your designs, basically everybody has everything they need to get going. All right, so in fact, we're actually going to now hear from one of our users, Mayan. And Mayan works at Deutsche Bahn, which is the national railway company in Germany.
Yep.
And as you can imagine, they have thousands of screens that they need to manage in Zeppelin. And that's like the exact type of user we want to focus with this feature, because we know that as you get more and more screens, these features are going to be more and more helpful to you. So we shared this feature with Mayan. They were really manually doing all this work before. So let's hear about what they thought about flows and annotations.
Let's check it out.
Hi, I'm Mayan, and I am a UX consultant at Deutsche Bahn, which is Germany's national railway system. I do UX concept and design with a specialization in interaction design at Deutsche Bahn. And I work with an omni-channel team over there. I'm super excited that Zeppelin is launching flows and annotations. With my team, we're always thinking about how to optimize the user's omni-channel experience, and flows and annotations help us do exactly that. At Deutsche Bahn, we have over 300,000 employees, making us the world's second largest transport company, actually. As we continue our digital transformation journey, we also need to support hundreds of different types of train operators, partners, products, booking options, logistics, etc. So my colleagues and I have to juggle high levels of complexity across many stakeholders. Because our product is so large and complex, we use Zeppelin to hand over our designs to our development team. It's been challenging to intuitively understand our user journeys from end to end, since we can easily have 20 to 30 screens at any given moment across these different sections and projects. If we make any change to one of these user journeys, I or any of my colleagues have to manually keep track of these changes to ensure all the changes are reflected in those updates. Or we may have to spend extra time to demo the user journey. I can tell you I'm very excited about flows in Zeppelin because I no longer have to manually maintain the user's journeys or to even worry about whether the other teams have the latest updates. The connectors and groups and flows make it really easy to keep all my screens organized across those different sections. Plus, we also get a bird's eye view of our work, which allows us to more quickly identify missing use cases and predict interaction scenarios that we might not have caught before. All of these go a long way and helps us create a product experience that's seamless across touchpoints. Flows is instrumental in helping us communicate to our many stakeholders, from developers to decision makers to internal clients. These stakeholders don't necessarily want to be in the design file. They simply want a feel of what our user journey will be like before changes go live. With flows, they can see the final overview and click through the screens themselves, which improves everyone's understanding of the overall digital experience. Plus, with annotations, I can pin product requirements to each screen so our developers will know exactly where to find instructions for the build. No more clicking through endless comments and threads. I can tell you that flows will continue to be an instrumental part of my workflow, as well as my teammates' workflow, as we expand to multiple flows and boards. It helps me communicate design intention, helps my team stay aligned, and helps us all keep track of ongoing changes to the product. Success for me is when our users can seamlessly book their travels and expect reliable performance from a system that transport over 4 billion passengers every year. So thank you, Zeppelin, for launching this exciting new feature. I'm really honored to be a part of your first user summit, and I look forward to seeing what else is coming up on the roadmap.
Right, thanks, Mayan. That was great.
Yeah, I think we're excited to see that Zeppelin is used to improve your communication and collaboration across your entire team, which is huge. It's like a massive team.
Yeah, I think these two features, they both sort of bring clarity to your designs. With flows, you specifically have that purpose-built feature to easily create and maintain your flows. And with annotations, you can bring in your documentation right next to your designs. So you basically have everything you need to get your designs to life. Yeah, so before I actually we close this off and hand it off to Elliot and Stephanie, we actually built a video for this feature because we like it so much. Let's watch that. Let's watch that together.
Woo. And done. Love how this design turned out. All right, Ava, bring on your developer magic.
Ooh, design updates. Cool stuff here. Wait, oh no, a wall of screens with no labels. My favorite. Do these even relate? This goes on forever. We can't build this. I haven't even had my coffee yet. Steve, my dude, we've been through this. Nice design. Can you please help me understand your complete user journey?
User journey? Sure. All right, let's add an arrow here. You start here and go here, and you take us here. Gotta reorder these screens, which is gonna break my arrows. How many screens do I have left? Oh, fudge. Ugh, I can do all this, but it's gonna take a while.
Next week? No, we'll miss our ship date. If you check the calendar, actually, there's a much faster way to do this.
Zeppelin? Isn't that just for specs? All right, Zeppelin, let's see what you got. Let's create our user flows. New arrow, oh, that was easy. Whoa, these are actual connectors, and they snap to my layers with integrated labels that stay connected too? Wait. So when I move these, it all stays? Whee! Oh, so much easier to maintain. Also, I can make flow groups? What? What if I look at one screen? Ooh, a flow preview. And annotations? Our PM is including the requirements right onto the design. And I can organize screens into sections? Now I'll create some tags so Ava can filter to the screens she's working on. These flows were faster. Ava, I owe you a latte and a percentage of my salary.
That was fast. Yes, this is what I was looking for. A clean, clear user journey. We got annotations, organized screens, finalized designs. I'm a happy Ava. Now this we can build, Steven. What would you do without me?